back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got another book talk video to share with you guys. And today, you guys, we're starting 2022 off strong. Today we're going to be talking about The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. Now, the next thing I'm going to say is big. It's a big sentence, but I'm going to say it anyway, and that is, I think this may be one of the top 3 books I've ever read, maybe even the best one. I went into this pretty blind. I'd never read anything by Louise before, but that's definitely going to change now. I'm excited to learn that she's got a ton of other books that I cannot wait to check out. So I went into this kind of blind. Before Christmas, I had sort of Googled like great ghost stories that came out in November or December 2021. And this book was on that list. And so I read a little bit of the blurb, and then I was like, yes, this sounds so good. But I had no idea what I was in for. I was taken on a trip with this book. I was taken to another planet with this book. This book, okay, so this book, the title alone has so many layers as you read. From the very beginning to the very end, you're learning about the different ways that this title comes into play in the story. There's so many layers. This book is about a woman named Tuki. She's an Aboriginal woman who lives in Minnesota. And when we first meet her, she's telling us about a dictionary that she was given when she was in prison, and how that dictionary kind of changed her life. From there, we find out why she was in prison, and it's this absolutely wild story that involves a dead body and transporting it. But we get the feel right off the bat that Tuki's not a criminal. You know, she's not a bad person. She just got caught up in a situation doing a favor for someone she loved, and it all backfired in very messy ways. From there, she gets sentenced to 7 years in prison. We don't spend that time with her. The next time we see her, she's getting out. From there, we see her life as it is now. She works in a bookstore, which is my dream. I live in a town that doesn't even have a bookstore, and I desperately want to open one. Maybe someday. Anyway, so she works in a bookstore, and in November of 2019, one of the customers of that bookstore, a woman named Flora, she passes away. And that sort of sets off the ghost story. We see that Tuki has married the police officer that actually arrested her back years ago, and they've got a nice little life together. Tuki's working at the bookstore that's owned by a woman named Louise, and I've since found out that Louise Erdrich also owns an independent bookstore. So this Louise character, she's not in it a lot, but when she is, I just found that. I loved it. I loved every time Louise popped up. So now I'm not going to go through this book point by point as I sometimes do, because we'd be here for hours, because there's just so much to say about this book. And I wouldn't know when to stop. So we're just going to try to keep it light and to the plot with no spoilers. So as, you know, 2019 becomes 2020, what happens next is the pandemic. And I loved the way the beginning of the pandemic was written in this. The way it was so confusing and scary, because nobody knew yet what it was. Nobody knew how it was transmitted. Nobody knew anything about it. And there's a scene when she's walking in to a grocery store and noticing the shelves are empty. And I can remember having those same thoughts and feelings that she has when she walks in and sees this. So as all this is happening, you know, she's being haunted by the ghost of this customer. And what's interesting is this happens early on, so it's not really a spoiler, but the daughter of the customer brings in the book that her mother had been reading at the time when she died. And she gives it to Tukey, and Tukey's like, okay, well, why are you bringing me this? And Katari, the woman's daughter, is kind of like, well, you guys were best friends. And Tukey's like, in her mind, she's like, best friends? What is she talking about? So she takes this book home, and that night she lays in bed and she reads a bit of it, and she starts to have this very overwhelming experience where she feels like she's about to pass away. And then it comes to her, and this thought comes to her that it's the book that killed Flora. The words literally killed her. And so this sets Tukey off on kind of a mission to destroy the book. She tries to burn it, it won't burn. She tries an axe, she can't cut it. So she buries it in her backyard next to a tree. The next morning she wakes up, that tree has fallen. And it's just, this story will take you to so many unexpected places, and it will make you feel so many unexpected things. At least it did for me. By the time we reached the end and I had about 20 pages left, I was sobbing my way to the end. The realizations that we have, the realizations that Tukey has as we go on this journey of her kind of coming back to herself, is unlike anything I've ever read. The only book that comes close to igniting in me such intense feelings is All My Puny Sorrows by Miriam Taves. One thing that I wanted to note was, as we're going through the book, she mentions so many different books, and I'm thinking to myself, I need to make a list of these books that she's mentioning, because I want to look them up and maybe try to read them at a later date. But I did that for a couple, and then I was like, no, because I would keep taking myself out of the story when I'd go to make a list of the books. And then when I got to the end, you guys, she's listed the books for us. So it says here, totally biased list of Tukey's favorite books. And it is, okay, so there's this page here, and then you turn the page, and there's 2 more pages of books. And then there's 2 more pages of books. It's like when I say, she mentioned so many books, so many. And then she compiled a list at the end. What? I loved it, loved it. Another thing I loved about this book is how a lot of, because Tukey and her husband and a lot of their friends, they're Indigenous, there's a lot of, especially from her husband Pollock's point of view, there's a lot of traditions that are talked about, and then later from the other girls at the bookstore, a lot of traditions, a lot of ceremonies. We get to learn about the jingle dresses, and I just loved reading about that. And a feather fan that Pollock's makes for Tukey. For 3 or 4 years of my life when I was younger, I lived up in Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories here in Canada. It's very, very north. There's a lot of Indigenous people there. A lot of the art and shops and museums are all very focused on Indigenous people and their culture, and their artwork especially is so beautiful. So living there, I got to learn a lot and get to be exposed to a lot of different kinds of culture that I just wouldn't have living in different parts of Canada. And looking back now, I treasure my time there so much because of all I got to see and learn and experience. And so I feel like that gave me an extra layer to truly appreciate this. Not that you wouldn't appreciate it if you don't have experiences like that. This book is for everyone. It's for everyone. And it's so beautifully written. There were so many times I stopped to highlight a sentence because the way that it was written was so just painfully beautiful. And there were times when she would say something, Louise in the book, she would write something that just became, it would spark something in me, and I'd stop and I'd be like, oh my God, yes, yes. That's so true. There's a lot of truth in this book, I feel like. And it's just beautifully written. The cover's beautiful. I don't know if you can really see on camera, but when you can see it up close, it looks textured. It's very beautiful. Everything about this, I just loved. I cannot wait to read more from Louise. And her last book before this, The Night Watchman, was a Pulitzer Prize winner. So apparently I'm just very late to all of this. But I can't wait to read more. And if you have the chance, read this. Read this. It starts off, it took me a while to get into it. The first, you know, I'd say 50 pages. I'd pick it up, read a couple pages, put it down. Read a couple pages, put it down. But after that, I got through it very quickly, very quickly. Like the first 50 pages took me like 3 weeks. And then the rest of it, the 300 plus pages after that, took me 3 days. So if you're reading it and you're finding it a little slow at the beginning, not that it's slow, a lot happens. But if it's taking you a while to get into it, just stick with it. Trust me on this, stick with it. The payoff is incredible. So like I said, we're starting 2022 off strong. And this is so good, so good. It's the genre I'd put it under is literary fiction. Even though it's a ghost story, it doesn't really fit into genre fiction, like the horror genre or thriller. It's nothing like that. It's not horror. It's not horror. There's a ghost, there's a haunting, but it's not like it's unsettling, it's unnerving at times, but it's not horror. You know, if that would make you shy away, don't let it. It's so good. Anyway, I'm gonna go because all I'm gonna do is keep repeating myself at this point. But let me know in the comments down below, have you read The Sentence? If not, let me know what book you've read recently and if I should check it out. And I will talk to you guys again real soon. Bye.